Lemuria, the legendary lost continent that supposedly existed in the Indian and Pacific Oceans. Some call it Mu, others say it was humanity's original homeland, but here's the question, was it real or just a 19th-century scientific mistake that became a spiritual movement? The story of Lemuria is fascinating because it started as legitimate science, then transformed into one of the most enduring alternative history theories. It involves evolution, continental drift, mysticism, and ancient civilizations, all wrapped into one compelling narrative. Let's start with how this theory began, because unlike Atlantis, which comes from ancient Greek philosophy, Lemuria was actually invented by Victorian scientists trying to solve a zoological mystery. In the 1860s, British zoologist Philip Sclater was studying the distribution of lemurs, those adorable primates found in Madagascar. He noticed something strange: lemur fossils appeared in Madagascar and India, but not in Africa or the Middle East between them. This made no sense with the geography we see today. How did lemurs get from India to Madagascar without leaving any trace in between? Remember, this was before we understood continental drift. Scientists thought the continents had always been in their current positions. Sclater proposed a radical solution: there must have been a land bridge or even a continent connecting India and Madagascar millions of years ago. He named this hypothetical landmass Lemuria, after the lemurs whose distribution it was meant to explain. Other scientists jumped on this idea. German biologist Ernst Haeckel proposed that Lemuria might have been the original home of humanity. He thought humans evolved in this lost continent and then spread to other parts of the world. Now here's where it gets interesting. This scientific hypothesis was quickly adopted by Theosophy, a spiritual movement founded by Helena Blavatsky in the 1870s. Blavatsky took the scientific concept of Lemuria and transformed it into something completely different. In her massive work, The Secret Doctrine, published in 1888, Blavatsky claimed that Lemuria was home to the third of 7 root races of humanity. She said Lemurians were actually spiritually advanced beings, standing 15 feet tall, with 4 arms, and a third eye in the back of their head. According to Blavatsky's teachings, Lemurians were hermaphroditic egg-laying creatures who eventually evolved into more human-like forms. They possessed psychic abilities and could communicate telepathically. Their civilization lasted millions of years before the continent sank beneath the waves. Blavatsky claimed she learned about Lemuria from ancient texts called the Book of Zion, which she said were written in Atlantis and preserved in hidden Tibetan monasteries. No one has ever found these texts, and most scholars believe she invented them. But Blavatsky's version of Lemuria captured the imagination of the occult community, and the legend grew from there. Other mystics and channelers added their own details, creating an elaborate mythology around this lost continent. James Churchward, a British occultist, published a series of books in the 1920s and 1930s claiming that Lemuria, which he called Mu, was located in the Pacific Ocean. He said it was a vast continent that sank 12,000 years ago, taking with it an advanced civilization. Churchward claimed to have translated ancient tablets in India that described Mu's history. He said Mu was the original Garden of Eden, home to 64 million people, and that all other civilizations descended from the Muans. According to Churchward, Mu had 7 major cities, elaborate temples, and advanced technology. The civilization was destroyed when volcanic gas chambers beneath the continent collapsed, causing it to sink into the ocean. He claimed survivors fled to become the ancestors of the Mayans, Egyptians, and other ancient cultures. Now here's the scientific reality. By the early 20th century, the theory of continental drift was being developed by Alfred Wegener. Scientists realized that continents actually do move, but very slowly over millions of years through plate tectonics. This explained the lemur distribution problem without needing a sunken continent. Madagascar, India, Africa, and Antarctica were all once connected as part of the supercontinent Gondwana. When Gondwana broke apart, lemurs in Madagascar and India became isolated from each other. So the scientific basis for Lemuria completely disappeared. The zoological mystery that created the theory was solved by plate tectonics. There was no need for a sunken continent in the Indian Ocean. But did the theory die? Not at all. By this time, Lemuria had taken on a life of its own in alternative history and New Age spirituality. People wanted to believe in this lost paradise, regardless of what geology said. Modern Lemuria enthusiasts point to various pieces of evidence they claim support the continent's existence. Let's examine these claims and see what holds up. First, there are underwater structures in various locations that some people claim are remnants of Lemuria. The Yonaguni Monument off Japan is often cited. It's an underwater rock formation with what appear to be carved steps and platforms. Mainstream geologists believe Yonaguni is a natural formation created by erosion and tectonic activity. But alternative researchers argue the features are too regular and geometric to be natural. The debate continues, though most scientists lean toward natural formation. Then there are the mysterious ruins on Nan Madol in Micronesia, an ancient city built on artificial islands using massive basalt columns. It's often called the Venice of the Pacific and dates back to around 1200 AD. Some Lemuria believers claim Nan Madol is either a remnant of Mu or was built by Muans who survived the continent's destruction. However, archaeological evidence clearly shows it was built by the Saudeleur dynasty. There's a well-documented historical record. Easter Island's Moai statues are another frequent connection to Lemuria. The massive stone heads are genuinely mysterious in terms of how ancient Polynesians carved and transported them. But claiming they're evidence of a lost continent is a huge leap. The Rapa Nui people who built the Moai have their own oral histories and traditions. They don't mention Lemuria or Mu. Modern archaeology has explained most of the mysteries surrounding the statues without needing to invoke lost continents. Some proponents point to flood myths found in cultures throughout the Pacific and Indian Ocean regions. These stories supposedly preserve memories of Lemuria's sinking. It's true that many cultures have flood myths, but this is likely because coastal communities worldwide have experienced tsunamis, storms, and rising sea levels throughout history. Flood myths are nearly universal, they don't specifically point to Lemuria. Here's something interesting though, while Lemuria as described by mystics definitely didn't exist, there actually were landmasses in the Indian and Pacific Oceans that have since been submerged. During the last ice age, sea levels were about 400 feet lower than today. This exposed land bridges and expanded coastlines throughout Southeast Asia and the Pacific. The Sunda Shelf, connecting mainland Asia to Indonesia, was above water. When the ice melted starting around 12,000 years ago, these areas were gradually flooded. Ancient coastal settlements would have been lost to rising seas. Some researchers think memories of these real inundations might have contributed to flood myths. There's also the Kerguelen Plateau in the southern Indian Ocean, a mostly underwater microcontinent that was above sea level 20 million years ago. It's a real submerged landmass, though far too ancient to have hosted human civilization. Zealandia, near New Zealand, is another example. It's a mostly submerged continent that sank millions of years ago. Again, far too ancient for humans, but it shows that continents can indeed sink. So while Lemuria as the mystics describe it never existed, the geological reality of changing sea levels and submerged land is genuine. Ancient people definitely witnessed dramatic changes to coastlines and land availability. Some researchers have tried to find a middle ground, suggesting that Lemuria myths might preserve distorted memories of real events. Perhaps ancient mariners explored these exposed lands during the Ice Age, and their stories were later embellished into legends of advanced lost civilizations. The Tamil people of southern India have legends of Kumari Kandam, a submerged land to the south of India. Some connect this to Lemuria, suggesting it might be a cultural memory of land lost to rising seas after the Ice Age. There is geological evidence that parts of the continental shelf off southern India were above water during lower sea levels. Whether ancient Tamils actually remembered this or the legends arose later is debated. The interesting thing about Lemuria compared to Atlantis is that Lemuria has become deeply embedded in certain spiritual and New Age movements. To some people, Lemuria isn't just historical, it's spiritual. Modern channels and psychics claim to receive messages from Lemurian spirits or even past life memories of living in Lemuria. Mount Shasta in California has become a focal point for Lemuria believers who think surviving Lemurians live in a hidden city inside the mountain. The Mount Shasta connection comes from 1930s books claiming that an advanced race called the Lemurians escaped the continent's destruction and established an underground city called Telos. People report seeing tall, graceful beings in white robes near the mountain. There are even reports of mysterious lights and UFO sightings around Mount Shasta, which believers connect to the Lemurians. The mountain has become a pilgrimage site for those seeking spiritual connection with Lemuria. From a scientific standpoint, none of this holds up. There's no geological evidence for a habitable continent in the Indian or Pacific Oceans during human history. Plate tectonics explains the distribution of species without needing sunken lands. But from a cultural and mythological standpoint, Lemuria is fascinating. It represents humanity's desire to believe in lost golden ages, in ancient wisdom that's been forgotten, in the idea that we're not the first advanced civilization. This same impulse drives beliefs in Atlantis, ancient aliens, and countless other alternative history theories. There's something deeply appealing about the idea that ancient people knew secrets we've lost. Psychology tells us that humans are pattern-seeking creatures. We want to connect dots and find meaning. When we see mysterious ancient structures or find similarities between distant cultures, our brains want to explain them with grand narratives. Lost continents provide that narrative. They offer simple explanations for complex questions. How did ancient people build massive stone monuments? Lemurian technology. Why do cultures across the Pacific share similar myths? They all descended from Mu. The reality is usually more mundane but also more interesting. Ancient people were incredibly smart and capable. They didn't need lost continents or alien intervention. They had ingenuity, determination, and thousands of years to develop their skills. The similarities between cultures often come from universal human experiences. Everyone has seen the sun, moon, and stars. Everyone deals with birth, death, and the cycles of nature. It's not surprising that cultures develop similar mythological themes. That said, there are genuine mysteries in ancient history that mainstream archaeology hasn't fully explained. Precision stone cutting at sites like Pumapunku, the astronomical knowledge encoded in ancient monuments, the extensive maritime trade networks of prehistoric peoples. But mysterious doesn't equal Lemuria, it just means we have more to learn. Every year, new archaeological discoveries fill in gaps in our knowledge. We don't need to invoke lost continents, we need to keep studying and remain open to revising our understanding. One fascinating aspect of the Lemuria story is how it reflects the times when it was created and popularized. The Victorian scientific version reflected the era's focus on natural history and evolution. Blavatsky's spiritual Lemuria reflected the late 19th century's fascination with Eastern mysticism and the occult. Churchward's Mu reflected early 20th century interest in lost civilizations and the idea that human history might be far older than believed. Modern Lemuria beliefs reflect New Age spirituality's emphasis on channeling, past lives, and ascension. Each generation has reinvented Lemuria to match its own cultural concerns and spiritual needs. This is actually how myths work throughout history. they evolve and adapt to remain relevant. Lemuria isn't a static story, it's a living legend that changes with each person who embraces it. For believers, Lemuria represents hope, hope that humanity has the capacity for spiritual advancement, that we're connected to ancient wisdom, that consciousness is primary and matter secondary. These are powerful ideas that science doesn't directly address. For skeptics, Lemuria is a cautionary tale about how scientific hypotheses can be misunderstood and transformed into pseudoscience. It shows how badly people want to believe in mysteries and magic, even when evidence points elsewhere. The truth is probably that both perspectives have something to teach us. We should be critical thinkers who demand evidence, but also remain open to wonder and possibility. Ancient history is full of genuine surprises, we don't need to invent false ones. Recent underwater archaeology has revealed that there are indeed ancient human settlements now beneath the waves, not on lost continents, but on coastlines that were flooded by rising seas. These discoveries are as exciting as any legend. Off the coast of India, divers have found submerged structures that might be several thousand years old. In the Mediterranean, ancient ports and buildings lie beneath the sea. These real finds are more fascinating than any myth. The lesson of Lemuria might be this: instead of searching for imaginary lost continents, we should explore the real ancient history that's waiting to be discovered. There are legitimate mysteries everywhere, incredible achievements by our ancestors that deserve study. We don't need Lemurians to be 15-foot-tall telepaths to be impressive, the actual accomplishments of ancient humans are remarkable enough. Building Göbekli Tepe, navigating the Pacific in canoes, developing mathematics and astronomy without modern tools. So was Lemuria real? As a continent that sank during human history, definitely not. As a scientific hypothesis from the 1860s, it was reasonable for its time but disproven by later discoveries. As a spiritual metaphor and mythological construct, Lemuria is very real. It exists in the imagination and serves important psychological and spiritual functions for believers. That kind of reality matters too, even if it's not geological. The story of Lemuria teaches us about how myths are born, how science can be misinterpreted, and how humanity's desire for mystery and meaning can transform a simple zoological puzzle into an elaborate spiritual narrative. Whether you see Lemuria as a foolish fantasy or a profound metaphor probably says more about your worldview than about ancient history. And that's okay, we can disagree about interpretations while still respecting the human need for meaning. What's most important is that we keep exploring, questioning, and learning about real ancient history, about how myths function in culture, and about why we're so drawn to stories of lost civilizations and forgotten wisdom. The real lost continent isn't in the Indian Ocean, it's in the gaps in our knowledge of ancient history. And unlike mythical Lemuria, that's a mystery we can actually explore and solve. So the next time someone tells you about Lemuria, you'll know the full story, from lemurs in Madagascar to Theosophy to modern New Age beliefs. It's a journey through science, spirituality, and the human imagination. And who knows, maybe someday we'll discover ancient coastal settlements from the Ice Age that inspired some of these legends. The truth might not be as dramatic as mystics claimed, but reality has a way of being surprising.